Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. There's no time for fancy wordplay this week, my friends. The tech news has broken free and is running amok, and I just barely have the strength to rein it all in. The Radeon RX 9070, so much potential, so much hope, and a day of revelation is promised upon the final day of February. The RTX 5070 Ti, which fills us with the opposite of potential and hope, already being overpriced. Coming on the 20th though, the 5070 on March 5th, 12 VH power cables melting again with the 5090 and a 5080, motherboard manufacturers throwing blows, AMD sacrificing golden rabbits, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. What more can you do? On with the tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Thermaltake's The Tower 600 series cases, continuing their popular lineup of vertical body design solutions with more room than ever for high-end PC builds. With support for full-size ATX motherboards with hidden connectors, side radiator mounts with room for 360 and 420mm AIOs, a dual-mode GPU mounting system, and vented side panels that easily pop off for access to cable management or the 13 fan mounts, the Tower 600 is both easy to build in and distinct in its design. There's an optional display stand and LCD panel too. For more on the Tower 600 series cases from Thermaltake, click the sponsor link in the video description. AMD at long last has revealed that thing they told us would be revealed back at CES finally has a revelation date, and that thing is the RX 9070 series, and the date is February 28th. This is per AMD VP David McAfee, who shared a link to an upcoming live stream that will reveal more, hopefully a launch date and some pricing, which will be broadcast on the AMD Gaming YouTube channel at 8 AM Eastern on the 28th. The two cards confirmed so far, the RX 9070 and RX 9070 XT, both sport a 16GB VRAM buffer, the same as Nvidia's recent $1,000 RTX 5080 that actually sells for way more than that. Rumors abound that AMD actually has some decently well-performing cards on their hands, and middle-class PC gamers are desperately hoping that AMD prices them aggressively. So there were joyful replies and immediate over-analysis when a leaker over on IT Home claimed AMD would be doing just that, pricing them aggressively, which apparently would mean an RX 9070 that handily outperforms the upcoming RTX 5070 while costing $500 to $600, and or an RX 9070 XT that outperforms or matches the RTX 5070 Ti while costing $600 to $700. That's still all very much rumor and speculation though, so here's some perhaps more solid info via a printed retail box for PowerColor's Red Devil 9070 XT that leaked Friday. 64 compute units seems to be confirmed, and yikes, a 900-watt power supply recommended. That's just for this overclocked model though. Fear not, the standard 9070 XT just needs a 750-watt power supply and two 8-pin PCI Express graphics connectors, which, as AMD's Frank Azar points out, come without a reputation for melting or catching fire. Still, I think PC gamers might even forgive the use of a 12V2x6 connector for the 9070 series if the price is right, and even AMD might not quite know where the prices will land until the dust clears from next week's 5070 Ti launch. Speaking of next week's 5070 Ti launch, the 5070 Ti launches next week. It was confirmed Friday as updates to the official Nvidia website now indicate coming February 20th for the supposedly $750 GPU, and also, while we're here, the RTX 5070 non-Ti has been pushed to March 5th, which is late, Nvidia. They promised a February launch at CES, so if you were looking for something to renew your I'm angry at Nvidia this week buff, there you go. Actually, that's probably going to be a stacking buff, as 5070 Ti card listings are already going live. Newegg has quite a few already skewed up, and you might note that there's no official Nvidia Founders Edition for the 5070 Ti, just partner cards, but no prices are shown as of yet on the egg. Micro Center did list prices though, and they are not pretty, aside from the single token PNY model at MSRP $750, and you know there will be so many of those available. The actual base price of the 5070 Ti is $900, just a 20% markup, which I suppose accounts for both the 10% tariffs and the scalper tax. And oh good, some even cost like as much as a 5080, $1,000 or more. $1,010 if you want MSI's launch edition that comes with a cute little Lucky figurine. Thank goodness board partners and retailers were able to witness the outsized demand for the 5080 and 5090 at launch and adjust their price increases accordingly. Otherwise, they might have left some value on the table. But they've spared themselves that embarrassment and given gamers the opportunity to confidently pay a fair market price for this hot commodity. Speaking of hot GPUs, there's one part of RTX 50 series cards that seems capable of becoming too hot: the power connector. Welcome back to 2023, when the fastest video cards in the world come with a non-negligible chance to have their most vital connector melt into a puddle of toxic fume-emitting molten plastic. It began late last week when Reddit user Ivan6953 posted images of a 12VH power cable extension that was clearly melted at both ends. Their Founders Edition 5090 was damaged, as well as their ASUS Loki SFX L 1000W power supply, and despite questions raised by the use of a third-party 12VH power extension, further analysis in an excellent video by Der Bauer revealed that the extension was likely not to blame. With or without the use of extensions, in certain conditions such as a not fully seated connector, load balancing between the 6 12-volt wires in the cable can become unbalanced, with some wires carrying higher amperage relative to the others. The wires are rated for 9.5 amps, and while under load, a 5090 pulling 575 watts should result in about 7 to 8 amps per wire. As tested by Hardware Lux and Jay's 2 cents though, even just unplugging and reseating the 12VH power connector can suddenly result in unbalanced current. Jay saw as much as 12.1 amps on a single wire, and Hardware Lux hit 10. That by itself would not be enough to melt connectors, but as shown in Der Bauer's follow-up video, running a 5090 on just 2 12-volt wires quickly warms them up to about 50 C while running 25 amps per wire. Failures happen in situations like these when just 1 or 2 wires carry nearly all the current, and that can heat up the connectors to 150 degrees Celsius or more, which would definitely fail over time. Frustratingly, this all could have been avoided if the spec was better designed, which BuildZoid outlined. 6-pin and 8-pin PCI Express power connectors are not notorious for melting because, for one, they have much higher tolerances, meaning they are overbuilt for the wattages they're rated to support and can survive an unconnected wire or two, but also because they use separate power channels, so if 1 or 2 of your 3 connectors isn't providing power, the GPU just won't power on, rather than trying to pull all its power from the remaining wires, overloading them, and causing fire or melting, or both. Even the 3090 Ti that first used the 12VH power connector separated its 6 12-volt wires into 3 channels, which is why those GPUs never melted, and it first started happening with RTX 4090s. Now the 5090 draws even more power than the 4090, pushing it closer to the limits of the spec with very limited tolerance beyond 600 watts, which is why BuildZoid and Der Bauer both believe this is not going to be a one-off failure. In fact, there's already another one reported by ambitious_ladder1320 on the ASUS subreddit, and this was with an RTX 5080, which draws substantially less power. If only there was some evidence that Nvidia was aware of this issue coming up again, like pictures of development RTX 50 series cards with, say, 4 of these connectors. Oh, there is. But let's talk solutions. If you are the lucky/unlucky new owner of a 5090 or 5080, what should you do? Well, if you happen to have an ASUS RTX 5090 Astral, maybe you are right to pay a $1,400 premium over the $2,000 MSRP, because that card is one of the few that has extra shunt resistors that can monitor each wire and warn you if they're unbalanced. If you don't have one of those, then Cybernetics CEO Aris Mistopoulos recommends not using extensions just to further avoid points of failure, and it seems advisable to go with the newer 12V 2x6 power supply rather than the slightly older 12VH power standard if you want a native connector. That, or just don't get an RTX 5080 or 5090, not that any were in stock to buy anyway. It's time for Tech Briefs, lightning fast tech news. Ka-chow! Speaking of video card spec upgrades nobody asked for, ASUS debuted their Q-Release Slim PCIe connector in the latest generation of motherboards, which allows you to remove your big honkin' GPU without even glancing at or touching the motherboard catch. That's because there isn't a catch, unless that catch is that when removing your GPU in this way, by angling it up and out, you might damage the PCI Express connector, which was first demonstrated by Unico's hardware. ASUS replied and said, nuh-uh, Unico must have done it wrong, but it's worth noting for anyone with one of these 16 motherboards that are affected to be careful when you're removing your GPU. And also, as Colorful pointed out, no one really asked for this, ASUS. The most recent trend of PCI Express catch release buttons, or Colorful's very straightforward on-off switch, worked just fine. And I'm hoping the chances that ASUS continues to use the Q-Release Slim design are slim to none. Here's another sign that the generational PC hardware gains we have enjoyed for so many years are slowing down. PassMark reported this week that average results of all Windows PC tests across the globe have declined in performance for the first time since they started logging this stuff 20 years ago. Line's supposed to go up, but line went down. I think we can correct this though. Everyone, go overclock your computers. Okay, good. I think we're safe. In other news, AMD has used the GRE moniker for its GPUs in a very limited capacity, originally for the RX 7900 GRE or Golden Rabbit Edition, which was China exclusive at first, with the name reflecting the Chinese people's love of metallurgy and a brace of conies. There's only one thing to do with a brace of conies. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. But just as the stupid fat hobbit Sam ruined good Smeagol's gift of rabbits as they made their way through the foothills of Ithilien, so AMD is mercilessly slaughtering their golden rabbits with the shameful excuse that it's not 2023, the year of the rabbit, anymore. GRE has been retconned to stand for Great Radeon Edition now, which sounds really dumb. What GPU do you have? Oh, the Radeon RX 7650 Great Radeon Edition. If they really wanted to zing Nvidia, they could just say, GPU resists exploding. That's a feature in 2025. Speaking of GPUs, all this GPU talk has nearly made me forget that CPUs were also announced at CES last month. Theoretically good ones too, the 9950X3D and 9900X3D, and it sounds like, in stark contrast to how GPUs have been priced lately, these will cost the same as last gen. This is per early postings on Newegg, and those prices are $700 for the 9950X3D and $600 for the 9900X3D, by the way. We still don't have a launch date for them, but it's looking like it will be in March, likely after the RX 9070 GPU's debut. What the heck, let's end on more good news. Valve. Good guy Valve has banned games that show you ads in the game. For all games, including free-to-play titles too, and to be more specific, this policy was already in place, but Valve has updated and clarified it, and they'll be enforcing it more rigorously too. After all, having to watch an ad just to continue playing your game sucks. And now there's another reason to point out to people why PC gaming is awesome and has a leg up on mobile gaming, where this sort of thing is absolutely rampant. Gaben, seen here flexing as he does, deserves at least another yacht or two for keeping Steam such a welcoming and user-friendly resource for fellow PC gamers. But there you have it guys, tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles that I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again everyone, cheers, we'll see you next week.